on a whole different subject. I don't know if you want to talk about this, Rudy, because I think we started talking about the legalities, my books and etc. And I wrote one magic book for the public. One out of all the magic books I wrote, they were always for the magic milieu. That
Sure.
not for the public. I wrote one, and the reason was that whole legal thing. Now, would you like to know why how that happened?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Let me give the fellas a little bit of context here for those watching this. Before I got on the call here, I was talking to Harry about the injustice, unfortunately, that Dan Sperry experienced. If you don't know, he was essentially robbed. They loaded up a van and took all his stuff, and it's like, man, that's screwed, to have your life's work stolen. And I was talking to Harry about a story in Apocalypse where he's talking about how he essentially got screwed out of a sizable amount of money, into the 5 figures, and it all pertained to publishing rights and all this kind of crap.
Yes.
And you mentioned your magic book and the memory book as well, but yes, that's a little bit of a preface to what you're going to share here.
Yeah. Well, what happened is this publisher, and I guess I can mention it, they're out of business, and I mentioned it in Apocalypse anyway.
Yeah.
My feeling is let them sue me, because anyway, they published 2 books for me, the memory book and Remembering People, the Key to Success. They were both, the memory book is still out there. It was on the bestseller list of the New York Times. I mean, it was a very important book for me. The other one is out of print now, but it was on a bestseller list in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles important newspapers. They both did very well. Long story short, I don't want to get into a long story. I didn't like the way Stein and Day, his name was Saul Stein, Day was his wife's name, Patricia Day. I didn't like the way they were holding back my money. I didn't like what was going on, okay? I won't go into detail about that. The nitty-gritty is I wanted to get out of that contract because in those days, and I assume it's still that way, when you do a contract, the main clause on top is that I'm talking about publishing contracts, the main clause is that publisher has the first right to your next and every other book you ever do. That's a ballpark thing. It still is, I'm pretty sure. I don't allow it anymore. And I didn't allow it after this problem we're talking about. But that was a ballpark clause. They want to, I don't blame them. You write a book that's an amazing bestseller that makes $10 million, of course they want your next book.
Yeah.
Okay, sense. So that was the clause in this contract with Stein and Day, but I did not want to do another book for them. And I had a couple of books in mind. So when I spoke to the head of the literary department of William Morris, which is a very important, I don't know if they still are, I imagine they are, very important talent agency, and they had one special literary department, and Owen Lester, that was his name, he's been gone a long time now, he was the head of the department, and we became pretty good friends, and he took care of me. When I told him I've got to get out of this contract with Stein and Day, he said, Harriet, it's only one way. You've got to put another magic book on, you got to put not another magic book, you got to put a book out for auction. That's what they used to do, so they can have publishers bid on it. That's what they called an auction for the book, which it was. People would bid, and the highest auction would get the rights to the book. You've got to do an auction for a book that Stein and Day will eventually back off. And I said the only way to get him to do that, for any book I wrote on memory, he would have paid $20 million. I mean, he was making a fortune with the memory book, etc. So I said the only way, he had just done a book on magic, which was awful. I won't mention the name. So I said, if I do a magic book, he may bid on it because he wants to keep me under contract. But I think he would lose the auction. So Owen Lester said, let's do it. That's what he did. He he started an auction. Harry Lorayne will write a book on magic, blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, Stein and Day bid on it. But so did many other publishers. And then, long story short, it went on and on until Stein and Day had to back off. They couldn't afford anymore, or they didn't want to afford anymore. and somebody else won the auction, a different publisher for whom I eventually wrote the magic book. But what happened, when Stein and they backed out and somebody else won the auction, Owen Lasser said to me, "This was great, Harry. You're out of that contract. There's only one problem." I said, "What?" He said, "You got to write a magic." I didn't have anything in mind for the public. I could write a book for other magicians, but that's not going to work for the public. That's how the magic book came into existence.